Welcome to MEX Talks. Thank you for being here with us. And thank you to tonight's sponsors for making this event possible. We are thrilled to be celebrating the joy of being Mexican with you all tonight. This theme is an opportunity to make space for the big moments, untold stories, and small examples of joy. Mexican family, tradition, pride, music, food. There is so much to celebrate in our beautiful heritage. MEX Talks was created by Latinos Progresando to give Mexican and Mexican American leaders a platform to reflect on a shared identity and tell stories to inspire positive change. Enjoy tonight's event in Spanish with real-time subtitles on your phone by scanning the QR code. Disfruten del evento esta noche con subtítulos en español en tiempo real. Escanee el código en sus teléfonos. A special sponsor, Target, as well as the presenting sponsors, Bimbo Bakeries USA, Blue Door Neighborhood Center, and Constellation Brands, to ABC Channel 7 Chicago, and all of tonight's sponsors. A special thank you to the 2022 MEX Talks Familia for helping to line up. Make sure you follow Latinos MEX TALKS. All of tonight's talks will be posted to Latinos Progresando's YouTube channel. In fact, you can find videos of every MEX Talk since 2013 on YouTube. MEX Talks is also streaming live now to a digital audience. Thank you all for joining. Now, a special performance. This is his talents as musician and educator to keep Mexican alive. Make some noise for Jose Alfredo Guerrero.
Good evening, everyone. Cuando quieras tú divertirte más y bailar sin fin, yo sé de un lugar que te llevaré y disfrutarás de una noche que nunca olvidarás. ¿Quieres bailar esta noche? Vamos al Noa, 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 vamos a bailar. Vamos al Noa, 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 vamos a bailar. Este es un lugar de ambiente donde todo es diferente, donde siempre alegremente bailarás toda la noche ahí. Este es un lugar de ambiente donde todo es diferente, donde siempre alegremente bailarás toda la noche ahí. ¿Quieres bailar esta noche? Here we go. Vamos al no. Thank you.
Incredible. Thank you, Jose Alfredo. A special thank you to MEX Talk's presenting sponsor, Bimbo Bakeries USA. Now, we are thrilled to bring to the stage our first speaker, Dr. Juanita Mora. Dr. Juanita Mora is an allergist, immunologist, and nationally recognized spokesperson association, and is known as a voice in education and science. She has also made headlines.
Thank you, everyone. I love the energy in the room. Good evening. First of all, I want to thank Latinos Progresando and my friend Omar Ramos from Univision Chicago for inviting me to take the stage tonight. Such an honor to be here with you. Well, I can't start my story without starting it and taking you back to March of 2020. It's the beginning of the pandemic. City of Chicago starts locking down. The country starts locking down. And then the world starts locking down. A novel virus has entered our country, our world. Businesses close, schools close. Yet, essential workers have to continue going to work amidst all this fear and chaos. They are not given protective gear. They're not being social distanced. There's no ventilatory system. And they're so afraid of infecting their children, their spouses, their grandparents, their parents. And when we talk about statistics, only 1 in 6 Latinos was able to telework from home, and only 1 in 5 African Americans. And then if they got sick, they were scared to go to the emergency room because remember, they were only allowed to go in alone, and so many people were dying. Their local doctor's offices had closed. So here I was, an allergist immunologist, 5 years into my own private practice, and I had a choice to make, whether I was going to keep my doors open to the community and help, or would I go virtual? These were the headlines that made me toss and turn at night, which included 10,000 employees test positive to COVID-19 at Tyson Meat Packing Company, the outbreaks at Foster Farms. Then you also heard the clamor of the people when the wife of one of Tortilleria El Milagros, actual employees who died, clamored, they're doing nothing to protect us. And then this memory comes into my brain that helps me make that decision. It's 7-year-old me sitting in a waiting room with my mom. She's just been diagnosed with kidney failure, and I'm sitting with her waiting hours for doctors to see her because we're waiting for a translator. I grow impatient and I go, Mommy, why does it take so long to see a doctor? And she says, Mija, because there's not enough doctors who speak Spanish. And I turned around at that point and said to my mom, well, I know what I want to do when I grow up. I want to be a doctor because I want to help the community and I want to talk to them in their language. And I guess you all know what I did. I kept my doors open to the Latino immigrant community to treat essential workers who were getting infected. And I'm so glad I did, because when we look at the statistics, the essential workers had a 5-time increase in death risk during 2020, and they comprised the largest population to die from COVID-19 in 2020. I want that to sink in. So much fear. They were the most at risk. But before I take you into my work during the COVID-19 pandemic, I gotta tell you a little bit about me and why this became so personal to me. First generation Mexican American, born and raised here in Chicago, Pilsen neighborhood. And when we talk about it, I'm the first of 5 children. My first language was Spanish. I learned English when I went to school. My dad, a butcher who worked in a meatpacking company. Remember the outbreaks at the meatpacking company? That's why it was so personal to me. My abuelitos braceros who worked the land. I came from a family and a community of essential workers. So how could I not be there for them? I grew up in a humble home. Lots of joy, lots of laughter, and also lots of faith. In a family that taught me resiliency. And boy, did that 7-year-old girl ever have resiliency. But looking at her journey, she would have never imagined that she would have been named a U.S. News and World Report health hero for her work during with the Latino immigrant community. And let me tell you how she spread so much light amidst so much darkness by becoming one with the community during the pandemic. Along with the American Lung Association, we brought 500 masks to the Pilsen neighborhood and masked essential workers, the elote man, the paleta man, the tamale lady, the restaurant workers, because they were all important amidst all these infections brewing. And you know what? American Lung Association taught me the gift of advocacy, doing more work for others. 2, becoming that voice of science and knowledge through the media and the news. And really breaking down the vaccines, breaking down the science, teaching and holding the hand of this community on a local and national level because they needed me. They needed this doctora. And I have to thank all the networks that gave me a platform throughout this time. Univision Chicago, My Casita, Univision National, WGN, ABC7, NBC, City of Chicago, State of Illinois, among so many others. 3, fundraising. I had the honor of going through the American Lung Association and doing a fundraiser at a national level with none other than Queen Latifah. And because that 7-year-old girl had to have her hit with Hollywood, right? So, and what we were doing is we were raising funds for the hard-hit Latino and African American communities. We raised $7 million with that fundraiser that were injected right back into the communities. Yes. 4, lending my voice at a local and state level, City of Chicago, State of Illinois, on panels of doctors. So that way we could increase vaccine confidence in our communities. We could break down barriers. We could get our community to navigate this pandemic. And 5, to create impact. Because I took the stories of these essential workers who were having unfair and no protection in their work sites, and I took their stories to a local and national level to create awareness because I wanted their work conditions to change. I wanted to stand up for them. And did that 7-year-old girl ever imagine in her whole life that she would be doing this? Heck no. But I'm here. And when we talk about this exact moment and where we are today, people always ask me, Dr. Mora, what's next? And here's my answer. We need a documentary that really tells the story of everything that the Latino immigrant community did to support this country. So that way, the next pandemic, we take care of them because we need to be their voice. When they ask me, what is the definition of the joy of being Mexican? Is being this doctora standing right in front of you, who was there for her community when they needed her the most. But she could not have ever done it without her familia, without her clinic team, was an amazing set of girl teams, girl power, and 3, her faith. There is not a day that I don't thank Diosito and la Virgencita for this blessed journey that they have given me. And I'm going to take my stage today, and I'm going to end the night with this quote. It took a pandemic for me to be a voice for those that have no voice. Through the process, I won the trust and the love of the Latino community, but I want them to know that they have always had my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mora. A special thank you to MEX Talk's presenting sponsor, Blue Door Neighborhood Center. Now, I'm proud to introduce Luis Eduardo Sanchez. Born to a Mexican immigrant father and Chicana mother, Luis Sanchez grew up in suburban Illinois. All it took was a high school project for him to reconnect with his roots, where he gained an appreciation for ranchera, traditional Mexican music, which he now his hit radio show Radio Fuego. Broadcasting through the airways of UIC's campus, he invites up-and-coming Latin musicians to play their songs, talk about their love for Mexican music and culture. Everyone, Luis Eduardo Sanchez.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. My name is Luis Eduardo Sanchez, 19-year-old son of a father immigrant, Jose Luis Sanchez, and mother of a Chicana, Jessica Sanchez. I'm gonna say it right now, me van a ver llorar, so mil disculpas ya, all right? So we're all gathered here today to discuss what is the joy of being Mexican. Is it opening a mazapan without it breaking? Is it drinking abuelita hot chocolate with your abuelita? I'm gonna discuss my story of what is the joy of being Mexican from my point of view. So one day in elementary school, I'm getting ready, eating cornflakes, listening to or watching Go Diego Go and Dora, and I'm learning this new word, and I'm so excited to share with my classmates. Oh man, I just learned this new word, and the word was learning the orgullo. So I'm excited to get to my classroom, and as you guys heard, I live in a predominantly white neighborhood. So, I'm excited to share with all my classmates that are white. I'm learning this new word, orgullo, and I'm out there telling them, hey, I just learned this new word, and I have this kid come up to me who says, hey, we live in America. You have to speak English. You can't speak Spanish in school. And from that moment, I was like, whoa, maybe I'm not supposed to show my roots or anything like that. Maybe that should only stay at home. So from that moment forth, I felt like my life was split into two. One at home, living with Spanish and everything like that. And the other one showing my American life. Fast forward to Mexico of 2019. I am now in San Pablo, Jerecuaro, Guanajuato, and for my tío Toño's wedding. And seeing my dad's pueblo, all the poverty, and seeing everything like that, it touched me because it shows that the life here in the U.S., it's taken for granted. Seeing what everybody comes from, seeing where my dad came from, it opened up a big part of me, making sure that I appreciated life in the USA more. So from that moment forth, I want to give a special shout out to 6 people. 4 of them are here today, and 2 of them couldn't be here. I now want to give a shout out to my grandparents, Eduardo Sanchez, my grandma, Sofia Sanchez, my parents, Jessica and Jose Sanchez, and the 2 people that couldn't make it here today, my great-grandparents, Papa Socorro Sanchez y Mama Lupe Sanchez, que están en el cielo. Those 4 people right there are the reason why I keep going and keep moving in life. They're the reasons that keep me going in life, making sure always looking for a goal. And now, seeing that, it really opened my eyes going to Mexico and seeing, there's something to be grateful here about, and see, not to hide your roots, to embrace them. So from that moment forth, I decided, I'm going to be as passionate as I can about my culture. I'm no longer going to hide it. I'm going to express it with everything I have. And now transition. I am now a sophomore at the University of Illinois Chicago. Thank you, thank you. Now, I'm always wondering what's the next step. What's the next step? So now, as you guys heard, I now have my show called Radio Fuego, and now I'm going to tell you guys the origin of how that started. So I'm walking around campus, and I see the club fair is there and everything like that, and the radio has there's table set up and everything like that. And right away, I knew from the bat that I wanted to have my radio station in Spanish because that's all I listened to. My mom, she showed me Spanish rock, reggaeton. My dad showed me the rancheras, norteños, everything like that. So I got the best of both worlds. So yeah, so from right there, I knew I wanted to play Spanish music, but it wasn't until April of 2022 that I made a TikTok that went a little bit viral. Uh, y pues, I pretty much said, hey, I'm inviting these Spanish grupos to come onto my show, and I'm tired of seeing grupos in Texas, California. There's so much talent here in the city of Chicago, and I just want it to be found. Social media did its thing, and like that. I had almost every group in Chicago contacting me, wanted to be on my show. Grupos from Texas, North Carolina, Iowa. I didn't even know there was grupos in Iowa. Pero yeah, and I just the amount of support I had was amazing from the start. And I had the idea of what my show was gonna be. Now I just needed the name. So my dad's picking me up from school, and I'm like, "Pa," I'm like, I'm telling him my idea to this. And he's like, "Oh, pues," he's like, "Why don't you try?" And I was like, "Wait, hold on." I was, I was like, "Well, the mascot of UIC is the Flames." So I'm like, let me put that in Google Translate and see what it is. And it came out to Fuego. Y pues ahí quedó, Radio Fuego. Ahí nació. They let me backstage to interview grupos like Bronco, Mi Banda El Mexicano, La Sombra Diamántica, so many grupos. And then they like my work so much, they invited me back for the Mas Flow Reggaeton Fest, where I was there interviewing Evie Queen, Zion and Lennox, Tito El Bambino, so many other people. It was a blessing. So I want to give a special shout out to them because they're the reason that my career is now moving forward. And yeah, that's pretty much what I leave you guys with. I leave you guys, if you guys are parents, please support your kids in their dreams. I'm thankful to have such a family that supports my dreams and everything I do. I encourage parents and everything like that to make sure you guys encourage your kids' dreams. You guys shouldn't be the ones to hurt them or support them 100% because even if it's not about the money, it's about getting out there into the world. Pues, el menos sí, but yeah, I leave you guys with that. And like I said, you guys can find more about me at the Real Luis Sanchez on Instagram, Radio Fuego. We're live every Tuesday to 3 to 5. I want to thank you guys all for coming out here today. Y puro Radio Fuego, mi gente. Gracias por escuchar, you guys. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Luis.
¿Cómo estamos? Are we enjoying the conversations? The talks, if you will? I'm about to go bother him and make sure I land on that UIC radio show. He may not know this, but I myself am a flame. So watch it, watch it. I got my master's from UIC, everyone. That's what it was. But let's please have a round of applause for our two speakers who just went. They have such amazing stories, and I think that one of the things that I really have enjoyed listening to them about is like, man, I really need to start doing things. Like, what am I doing? How do I land here and tell you my story? Well, I guess I gave you a microphone anyway, right? So when it comes to the songs that they asked me to please pick something joyful to start the show off. And I don't do joy. I live in the rancheras, you know? I live in the trágame tierra. I live in the ya no. And it was hard. It was a little hard finding a song, but I was like, what's something that unites everyone? And I was like, Juan Gabriel. Because he can take us from all the way up here to all the way down here and then do it all over again. So I was like, all right, I'll just invite everyone to El Noa Noa. And by that, I mean the drinks that we're going to have out there later. But I hope that you're enjoying the night. I know that I've heard the stories already, so you're in for a treat. Que disfruten. Gracias.
Así se celebra ser mexicano. A special thank you to MEX Talk's presenting sponsor, Constellation Brands. And now for our next speaker, please welcome to the stage immigrant with Mexican and Chinese heritage, background in political communications. She founded Chicago-based PR team C1 Revolution and has recently completed a really highlighting the stories of communities across the country have been featured on Chicago Magazine and the New York Times. Let's welcome Jimena Beltran Quan Q to the stage.
Hi. Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. I want to start by letting you all know earlier this year, I decided to redesign my life, and that is a euphemism for getting a divorce. I'm glad you're laughing. Thank you. But to get a divorce, it meant I also had to leave my job. And it meant I was going to lose all the stability and security that I had worked very hard for. So I didn't know what I would do next, but I knew I had 8 weeks to figure it out. So I put in my notice and I went to work. I spent that time reading a lot of financial books, speaking to a lot of friends and mentors, reestablishing my business, asking and actually accepting help. At 35, I was redoing my life. I was starting all over. But I knew I could do it. Why? Because of my mom. She's here. Mom, raise your hand, please. I know you're embarrassed. Come on. Come on. She's back there. I lost my notes, but they're just a security blanket. I know what I'm going to say. I knew I could because my mom came here with a baby on her hip and a toddler in her hand. I was a baby. My sister was a toddler, by herself from Mexico City and arrived in Chicago in the dead of winter. She left behind her language, her culture, her family and friends to give us a better life. Just need a second. So tonight, I'm going to talk to you all about love, family, money, and how the three together saved my life. One of the most important things my mom said at the beginning of this process, which I love and changed my mindset, was she said, "What are you afraid to lose? We came here with nothing. You have nothing to lose." And she was right. But it was kind of frustrating that how is it that she knew me better than I knew myself, which began a whole journey of rediscovering who I was. It's what my dad calls mi jornada, my journey, what my mom calls mi odisea. And in the process, I became who I've always been, which is myself. But my family, earlier this year, or January 2021, my sister had a baby. Lucas, he brought so much joy into our life. For a long time, family meant to me, my mom, my sister, and me. It was just us three. So I had never imagined a life beyond us. And all of a sudden, this child was bringing a new future. He gave us a new lease on life. And I realized there was so much pain in my childhood associated with all the struggles, which I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. But this is an opportunity to give him financial stability, freedom, love, everything we didn't have. That child challenged me to challenge my identity, and also healed my relationship with my father. And as I thought, what are the things I want for this baby to grow up with? What are the values that they have? One thing kept coming up to the top, which was I want him to have a strong sense of self and be proud of who he is and where he comes from. And that really comes from my mom. She instilled that in us at an early age, and it goes beyond language, culture. I saw this woman who did not allow any limitations. She didn't let herself be put into a box or a stereotype. She did the life that she wanted and created something that was more loving, healthier for her children. And she did this through one very specific way. She did it by having a tight control of her money and urging us to do the same. I didn't appreciate it and I didn't value it. And unfortunately, it took till I was getting a divorce for me to really step up and start looking at my money. And it took someone with a very similar experience to me to see the value and how important it is, to see myself reflected. I invited him. He's chronically late, so I don't know if he's here. Jorge, are you here? Yes! Ah! He's here! I was like, oh, I see my friends. Okay, sorry, I got excited. Jorge, it took Jorge, my first friend who is Mexican, born in Mexico City, like I am, raised by a single mother, like I am, who made a lot of money. Can I say? Made a lot of money. Don't ask him for it. He doesn't have it anymore. He had to pay his employees as contractors. But he was the first person that I saw, wow, he can do this. It's one thing when someone with wealth tells you how to manage your money. It's another thing when someone who comes from the same situation, from the bottom, comes out of that and tries to lift you up. Oh, I'm gonna cry. I didn't expect it. And my mom tried to do that for us, but I didn't appreciate it. It took Jorge, who encouraged me to look at money as a tool, as a way to help my life and see it for what it is, something that's of value, not something to run away from. So thank you, Jorge. I can't believe you're here and on time. And I think I lost my place, but I have it here. Give me a second. My third note, that's where it is. Hang on. We're almost there. Okay, put these down so I don't get confused. Okay. So, but you can't be what you can't see. And so that's what, for Jorge, you can't be what you can't see. And our community does not talk about money enough. In my process, one of the books I read, The Millionaire Next Door, which was just as good as therapy for me, analyzes the habits of millionaires. And it shared there's 3 common traits that they have. They are immigrants, entrepreneurs, and or very frugal. So I knew I could do the first 2 for sure. But the last one, I needed a little work, but I knew exactly who to go to, my teacher, my mother. I began to see her in a whole new light. I saw her with millionaire habits, and it sparked the first ember of hope that everything would be all right. I had worked so hard to have a life that was comfortable, because it meant having a comfortable life meant moving away from the discomfort I had as a child and the struggles that we had as children. Unfortunately, I hustled my way to comfort, but it didn't bring me peace. So here I was, 35, and I'm like, I'm gonna disrupt it, start all over. Let's go, let's do it again, let's try again. Now knowing what I know. And all of a sudden, I found that my power was coming from the place, my childhood, that I associated with so much pain, now was the source of my strength. It's a lot up here, let me tell you. Power does come from money, and it comes from working really hard. And as the saying goes, the devil works hard, but Mexicans work harder. But, however, we cannot work or save our way to wealth. It doesn't work that way. You have to understand the systems that allow money to flow to you. And for me, the solution is understanding your money reflects your values. It shows what you value the most. I began to see that the most important thing in my life was family. Not fancy dinners, not the travel, not clothes. It was my family and the people I consider my chosen family. Who are here. There's a few back there as well. That was the most important thing to me. And, man. I lost my spot, but I have my full script. Wait a second, hang on. All right. I'm almost there. We're almost done. Hang on. Sandy, my coach, is like, oh man. All right. I know. Okay, I got it. Spending the money, how I was spending my money did not reflect my values, so I literally changed my habits overnight. Or more truthfully told, I reverted to the habits of my childhood. No more eating out. Hay comida en la casa. New clothes, off to la tienda de mis éxitos, which is, what we called La Segunda, which there is so much stigma and shame attached to it growing up, but now it's super trendy. We're in a climate change crisis. Like, that's where I'm gonna go get my clothes. And Lucy and I talk about La Segundas all the time, and we're sharing, are you even friends if you don't go thrifting? When I was younger, I used to be enraged when my mom would go line item by line item trying to find $1 she could save or an overcharge so she can squeeze every dollar. And now I was going to the bank and asking them to reverse my $2 ATM fees because, como dice mi mamá, nadie te lo va a regalar. And we're almost there. Okay. Being more Mexican and less American actually allowed me to save $20,000 in 1 month before I left my job. Thank you. Now I'm relying on my notes. Oh, and I had fun doing it because I knew I could, because this was a choice. Being Mexican taught me there's so much power in finding vibrancy in every single moment in your day. This is your life. It's happening now. It's a moment that is, the future isn't a day, a month from now. It happens and unfolds in these moments. And so I found so much pride in the fact that I came from, my great-grandmother Alta sold meat on the streets. My mom put 2 kids through college while hovering over the poverty line most of our lives. Yeah, okay. But my mom was right. My mom was right. What did I fear losing when we came here with nothing and had nothing to lose? But since we're here and we have to work, what is the point of doing all of this if it's not with the intention of breaking the cycle of poverty and creating generational wealth for our families? Stability and freedom really comes from financial literacy, having the freedom to understand your money and knowing where it comes from and where it's going. And you have to put your money to work for you as soon as possible, because you can never work as hard as your money can. And that begins by educating yourself. If you're curious how I did my $20,000, I put a whole post on my website, jimenanbqk.com. It's not financial advice. It's just literally step-by-step the books I read, the work I did, which made a difference. It saved my life to have that confidence, to know where my money was going. It changed everything for me. And I also have to give credit to Jorge, because he said something similar to me too, which is like, you'll make it back. He was never worried. He's like, you're Mexican, you're gonna figure it out. You're gonna make it back. So when I think of the legacy I wanna leave for Lucas, it's to be more Mexican. What that means is, I don't want him to spend his life worrying. I want him to have the freedom to understand his money, to live below his means, because it gives him the freedom and the choice to do whatever he wants to understand those systems. And immigrants have millionaire habits. I know not everyone's an immigrant, but a lot of us come from them. And I'm sure there's moments with your parents that you're like, oh man, what are they doing? This is embarrassing, checking every dollar. But they have millionaire habits. And having financial freedom means allowing your life to look however you want it to. That can mean leaving a job that no longer serves you, a relationship that doesn't, starting a new life, starting all over, or all of the above. Because financial freedom beats out social status any day. And it's really not about how much you make, it's how you spend it. So my mom, a Mexican immigrant, taught me that. Thank you for joining me on this emotional roller coaster. I love you guys.
Thank you, Jimena. A special thank you to all our sponsors, especially Valdez and Willem LLP, National Museum of Mexican Art, Sinai Chicago, ABC7, and the McCormick Foundation for making tonight possible. As you know, MEX Talks was created by Latinos Progresando to celebrate the Mexican experience in the U.S. But this organization has an even greater purpose and a vision for the future of Chicago's neighborhoods. Take a look.
When you grow up in a neighborhood, you want to know you can get help when you need it. Latinos Progresando brings people together to build that type of community. Since we first opened our doors 25 years ago, we have continued to grow and evolve as the community grows and evolves.
When we first moved our offices into the Cermak corridor, there were a lot of organizations here, but they were working independently. And so since getting here and talking to our partners and getting together through the Marshall Square Resource Network, we've been able to bring organizations from different sectors, health, education, etc., to work together on different strategies that directly impact our community residents.
During the pandemic, when Marquette Bank was closing a branch on Cermak, they made the bold decision to donate it to Latinos Progresando. So instead of what would have been a vacancy, we have a new resource center. And now we're working on restoring another currently vacant site, a former Chicago Public Library, which will become a vibrant community center.
From a business perspective, I think the Cermak corridor will benefit from having that new building and not just buildings that are being shut down and closed. I grew up in a little village. I had that sense of security and community with my family and people around me. And LP helps other people that might not have that opportunity to have that safety.
The idea that we can use a space that used to be a library where families would come to learn and grow, to now use it as a community center that has that same learning and growing mentality and is for community, is extremely important. We want families and young children to walk by and see a beautiful building that's from their community, for their community, and gives them hope to continue to work in community.
I've been in Latinos Progresando for 7 years. I know that the organization has grown since day one. Latinos Progresando opening its community center, it's a dream come true. It means to be actually able to have our own space, a safe space where our community would know that Latinos Progresando is here to stay.
The community center for Latinos Progresando, I think, represents the deep commitment to a place. Having a community center, I really think, is a place that the community can feel like it's their home. And it's a place where they can connect with their neighbors. It's a place where they can receive help, but it's also
Understanding what it's like to come out of the shadows in this country, to feel secure, to be able to change lives. And every case, it's like I'm seeing myself, I'm seeing my family, all the families. Just thank you calls that we get afterwards. So when we call and say, your case was approved. Oh my goodness, just to hear the emotions on the other end. It's so gratifying to be able to hear that, and I feel so blessed.
Both of my parents are Mexican immigrants. Growing up, I always remember the story my mom shared with us of one of her coworkers who helped guide her to find the resources she needed as a new immigrant in this country. Community families will no longer need to rely on coworkers or word of mouth to find out about resources that they might need. No matter where they're from, no matter their situation, they can come in and ask for help and have their needs met with a smile from people working at Latinos Progresando.
3 words to describe Latinos Progresando would be respect, professionalism, and calidad humana. I couldn't find another word but calidad humana, because calidad humana is the big umbrella for us, right? That includes passion, caring, going above and beyond to do everything that's in our power to be able to service our community.
And I don't think any of that's changing. What I think a community center will be able to add to that is that it will be able to better bring people together. We'll have more tools, we'll have more space available to us to continue to do this work. And those things that make Latinos Progresando a special place, the community, the people, the mission, those things are still going to be there. And now I think they'll be amplified.
I believe that when you elevate one organization such as Latino Progresando and having the community center, you elevate the Mexican community, you elevate the Mexican kind of business corridor that is on Cermak, and in turn, I'm hoping that you elevate many families and many individuals in the community.
Wow. I think it's a representation for everybody in our neighborhoods, everybody who grew up here, to see something and say, if I can dream about something and I can work hard and I can connect with great people, we can do anything in the city. And so when I look at that building, I see dreams coming true, and I see something that can inspire other people to reach for their goals.
This is just the beginning.
You're already here tonight, and we appreciate each and every one of you. Please consider deepening your support by making a contribution to support Latinos Progresando's work in our communities. Just scan the QR code or visit latinospro.org/donate to make a gift tonight. Celebrating the joy of being Mexican. And we are so thrilled to have our next speaker, Julissa Arce. Julissa Arce immigrated to the U.S. from Mexico at 11 years old and was undocumented for almost 15 years. During this time, she ranks of Wall Street and became VP of Goldman Sachs. Arce is a nationally best-selling author known for My Underground American Dream, Entre las Sombras del Sueño Americano, and her most recent, You Sound Like a White Girl, The Case for Rejecting Assimilation, as well as a highly sought-after speaker and political commentator. Her stories have inspired people at nationwide events such as TEDx. Please welcome Julissa Arce.
It works. Hi, everyone. So, on my second wedding day, I got ready at my grandmother's house. It's on La Calle de los Pajaritos, which, like other streets in my hometown of Tasco, is paved with cobblestones. You cannot miss her house because there is a bright Rosa Mexicana bougainvillea that pops against the white paint. I got to the house early in the morning, and the birds that the street is named after serenaded me with their song. I was steaming my decorately embroidered white dress that hung on an aqua wall. And even though I was in this big house, all alone, for the moment, I felt all the joy that comes from being Mexican, from having a big Mexican family, and marrying a handsome Mexican man. My husband was born in California, but he is Mexican through and through. Fernando and I got engaged in Paris on an early fall morning. We were walking through the Palais Royal. There were no tourists, there were no locals crossing by the plaza. We had it all to ourselves. He got down on one knee and asked, "Will you be my wife?" Meanwhile, a photographer he'd hired had captured every moment. He's good, my husband. On the plane ride back home, we started making plans. There had been 200 people at his family reunion, so that was our starting number. By the time we added my family and our friends, we were up to 400 guests. And that's the joy of being Mexican. Family whose name you do not know, or it might be a mystery how you are related, if they are a real primo or someone you've just always known as a primo, it does not matter. They are coming to the wedding because they are family. Just when I was beginning to picture my dream wedding in my hometown in Mexico, where our money could also stretch further for those 400 guests, my husband dropped some pretty devastating news. He told me that having a wedding in Mexico would mean that some of his close family members wouldn't be able to attend because they were in the middle of an immigration case that prevented them from leaving the US. I felt as though my joy had been buried. My mom didn't have a visa to come to the US because 10 years earlier, she lost it when a Border Patrol agent canceled it when she tried to come visit me. We figured it wouldn't hurt to apply again. Maybe enough time had passed. Maybe La Virgencita de Guadalupe would finally answer our prayers. Maybe this time it would be different. So I filled out the extensive application, paid the extensive fee, and then we waited. I can't remember if this was the 6th or the 10th time we had applied over the last 10 years. A few months later, I flew from Los Angeles and my mom took the bus from Tasco. And we met up the night before her interview at a hotel nearby the embassy. She had gotten her hair blown out and her highlights were fresh. Me tengo que ver como una persona seria, she said. I hated how much we have to perform in front of immigration officials, how we have to think about what our hair says, what we wear. We have to think and consider every word that comes out of our mouth. We have to smile even if we're nervous. And I know all of this because I went through my own immigration process. But feeling my mom's sweaty palm as we walked from the hotel to the embassy the next morning was almost too much for me to handle. We walked up to the end of the line where a woman in a blue uniform checked my mom's paperwork and confirmed that she had an appointment. You can't go in there with her, she said to me. I know. Can I just wait in line with her until she has to go in? I asked. Fine, she responded. After my mom went in, I paced back and forth, praying and hoping that her application would be approved. I saw viejitas coming out with tears of happiness rolling down the deep folds of their faces. They might finally reunite with their sons and daughters en este lado, maybe whom they hadn't seen in decades. I saw a young couple argue. No hubieras dicho eso, gorda, the man said. Pues ya ni modo. Voy a gastar mi dinero a otro lado. Pinche gringo déspota, she responded. After a couple of hours, my mom came out the same door. She shook her head and gave me a sad smile. Her visa had been denied again. Lo siento mucho, mi bonita, she said, almost crying. There was no interview. The woman just looked at me and told me my application had been denied. I couldn't imagine my wedding without my mom. And I also felt like I couldn't ask Fernando to have a wedding without his family. My mom went back to Tasco heartbroken, and I went back to LA furious. I was so angry at how this country kept tearing my family apart and in the process kept breaking my mom's heart. Fernando picked me up from the Los Angeles airport, and at dinner, discussing what had transpired, he said, "Why don't we have 2 weddings?" I thought he was joking. We had already talked about how we didn't have money to even have 1 wedding for 400 people. I'm serious. We can have a smaller celebration in Mexico, and your mom can be there for the mass, and then we'll have a big party in Santa Barbara, and my family will be there. The immigration laws of this country had already decided too much of my life, of our life. It had already taken so much of my Mexican joy. So we went for it. On March 31st, the day after my 35th birthday, we had a civil ceremony in sunny Park Santa Barbara. Our wedding celebration in Mexico would not have any legal meaning, and in the eyes of God and in the eyes of the government, we wanted to be married. Fernando's cousin officiated in a Spanish ceremony. His parents, his sister, and 4 of our closest guests were present. Afterwards, we celebrated with a wine tour through San Ynez Valley. I may or may not have, I cannot confirm, knocked over a cow after said wine tour. On April 8th, the day of our 2-year anniversary, and only 2 months after my mom's visa appointment, I walked down the aisle of the historic Santa Prisca, my 20-foot veil behind me. We came out of the church and it seemed like the whole town was there to cheer us on as the mariachis played. Planning this wedding had been chaotic. I pretty much organized vendors, signed contracts, did food tastings all through WhatsApp. And whenever Fernando and I thought we were gonna have to cut back on the mariachi or on the banda or the fireworks, our family stepped up. And that is the joy of being Mexican. Familia. My uncles pitched in for the music. His parents helped us with the venue. When the truck carrying the food broke down, because that's also the joy of being Mexican, my cousin's husband came to the rescue. He found where the truck had broken down and then transferred every bite of food onto his truck and delivered it to the venue. My other primo went to the store and bought bocadillos so people wouldn't starve. We did the very guerrerense iguana dance. If you don't know what it is, definitely Google it after. My Chinese friend Arthur, who does CrossFit and is super fit, showed everyone up with his iguana. Fernando and I did our first dance as husband and wife to Julian Sebastian's Eso y Más. Y sí, salvaría tormentas, ciclones, dragones for him. Then, on November 17th, I walked down the aisle again, this time in Santa Barbara, with Fernando's family, wearing the ball gown I had always dreamed of, and the one I didn't get to wear at my quince. My brother took my dad's place walking me down the aisle, and I knew that my dad was watching from above and was proud of Julio and I. Over 250 of Fernando's family and our friends danced to banda, drank probably too much tequila, and 1 or 2 cousins might have flown from the Víbora de la Mar line. Each time Fernando and I said, "I do," we were assured that our Mexican joy, our Mexican family, and our love would carry us through. And faced with our first challenge, our love overflowed, with 3 beautiful celebrations as proof. It's as the Mexican proverb says, they tried to bury us, but they didn't know we were seeds. Our love transcends borders. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julissa. A special thank you to MEX Talk's title sponsor, Target. And now, Latinos Progresando is proud to welcome to the stage our 2022 MEX Talks headliner, Luis Valdez. Luis Valdez is an internationally acclaimed and celebrated playwright and director called the father of Chicano film and theater. His many works like Zoot Suit and La Bamba reflect a necessary and powerful El Teatro Campesino, known for being the cultural arm of the United Farm Workers and the Chicano movement. Luis Valdez's vision and craft has transcended his work to that of a true revolutionary art.
I've always believed the theater is a creator of community, and that community is a creator of theater.
Para bailar la bamba se necesita una poca de gracia pa' mi patilla y arriba, bamba, bamba. Bamba, 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 bamba. Hey!
I'm of the belief that every community, regardless of economic status, should have access to a theater. I am the ballad sings. And my voice is of the streets and the cantinas, dance halls, and all the places where I am heard. For I am the soul of the common people that sings of tragedies and melancholy, but also happiness.
Please join us in giving a warm Chicago welcome to the one and only Luis Valdez.
¿Cómo están todos? ¿Bien? Qué bien. It's such a pleasure to be here again in Chicago on Michoacan Avenue. I've always enjoyed that link between Michigan y Michoacan. It's the same word, ¿verdad? The place of the fish. Y aquí está toda la raza pescando. ¿Qué vamos a hacer? All right. Well, I want to thank MEX Talks, mi tocayo Luis Gutierrez, and all the wonderful staff for this opportunity to come and speak to you tonight. What a pleasure. What an honor, especially in this lineup of such talented, intelligent leaders and artists and the future. Me llena de regocijo y de orgullo poder estar aquí con ustedes y con tanta juventud, because our future depends on the young people. I'm going to share a couple of little stories with you. Actually, I was born in 1940 in California. My folks came out of Sonora. They were Yaquis once upon a time. And they came to Arizona, to Tucson and Mesa, and they were doing whatever they could, working in the mines, picking cotton. Eventually, they made their way to California in the 1920s to create basically King Cotton and King Grape. The big corporations were getting started, and they needed labor, and so they used the trains to truck in La Raza to come in and develop the agribusiness. You know, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry in Califa, and it's on the backs and on the sweat and on the goodwill of los trabajadores, los campesinos. So I was born in a labor camp, a farm labor camp in Delano, California. And it was my grandmother's little shack, and my mother went there, and she took me there before they tore the camp down. They put Highway 99 right through there, right through the barrio. But anyway, I was born there, and a year later, a family moved in across the street from that labor camp to one of my tias and into one of the cabins that belonged to one of my tias. And it was a family from Yuma, Arizona, And they were the Chavezes. And there were two teenage boys. One was called Sisi, and the other was called Rookie. And so they turned out to be Cesar and Richard Chavez. And so that link, you know, right across the street, there it is, has defined my life. You know, sometimes uno no conoce su destino, but if life puts you in punches you in the face or gives you a kick, you know, you'd find your destino pretty quick. And so, but I wasn't there to receive, and I was only 1 year old because we were already on the migrant path. I was on the migrant path before I could walk. I was in my mother's arms like a lot of campesino babies, you know, sleeping in a fruit box, you know, in the fields. And then we were staying in a little barn in a little town in Northern California, picking prunes. And my tío and my tía were there with my cousins, and we were there. They moved the cows out and moved the Mexicans in. And so we used to cook. My mother and my tia used to cook on a tina, a tin tub with a hole cut in the side. It was a portable kitchen, man. It was a portable grill. And so it used to ride on top of the truck real easy. It was heavy, it was light. And so that morning, that one morning they were there cooking and un descuido, you know, someone was careless and they didn't notice that I was crawling around. And I had a little cousin, little baby girl who came, she was starting to walk, and someone had put a little pan, una tinita, you know, of water. En un momento, my cousin grabbed the handle and she found it really hot and she lost it and dropped it and it fell on my back. And I screamed and I don't remember, tell me. and I passed out. My mom and dad came running. They wrapped me up in a blanket, and they took me to the nearest hospital in a little town called Gilroy, garlic capital of the world. And when they got to the hospital, they opened up the blanket, and all of the skin on my back sloughed off. And my mother was really scared to death, 20 years old, pobrecita. And she had just lost the baby before me, another brother that I had who died. And so she said, mijo, te estabas muriendo, And so they took her into the emergency. There was no burn unit or anything. It's 1941. This is before Pearl Harbor. And we were Mexicans. We were migrant workers, So they put some kind of treatment on my back and released me. I guess today I'd be in a burn unit. I'd be in the ICU, in the ER, they would have taken care. But in those days, that was the way it was. And it's both good and bad, that they released me. I've always believed that you can take the negatives in your life and turn them into something positive. And this was my first real experience, because two things happened. On the one hand, that water that hit me, that boiling water, the agua hirviente, hit me right here in the back and scalded me, but se me echó la pompa a andar, you know what I mean? It was a wake-up call. It was more than a kick in the ass, man. It was a wow, colazo, with hot water. And the other thing, though, is that for the next 6 months, I slept on my mother's stomach. 20 years old, she was afraid that I would roll over, so mi mamacita holding me. And I took in all that love that she was giving me. There's nothing like mother's love. Nothing. Mothers are blessed things. And so they empower their kids. And so my mother did that. And she had 10 kids. I was only number 2 or number 3, really, but 2 out of 10 kids, 5 brothers, 5 sisters. But my brothers and sisters always felt a little bit jealous of me because, my mom, he said, you were always her favorite. But that's not true. But the thing is that she did empower me, She did empower me. So after the war, 46, we're still on the migrant path. And this is when I got hooked in the theater because what we were doing is picking cotton. And, the cotton season came and went like that because there were thousands of people of all colors, man. There were blacks from the South. There were the Japanese that were coming out of the concentration camps, Chinese even. There were white people. Okies were out there. I thought everybody was a cotton picker, Todos son pescadores, So the cotton season went like that, man. And we couldn't move on out of the labor camp because my dad's truck was broken down. We had a little pickup truck, so we had it up on blocks, and we're living hand to mouth. And so what happened is we're living off of the fish. Talking about place of the fish at the San Joaquin Delta in California. We used to fish and take them home to my mom, and we were eating fish tacos before they were trendy, So one morning, ya me me ahogaba, I'm almost drowned. I fell in the river, and fortunately, my dad reached me el pelo, pulled me out like a fish. And so my mother got really scared, and she said, maybe you and your brother better go to school, because the school bus used to come into the camp. So we went to school, and she found a little brown paper bag, and there were paper shortages in 1946. But she used to make the tacos de tortilla, the harina, and our fish tacos, or once in a while eggs, if you can find them, beans. And that's what I took to school, Me daba vergüenza, really, because they had no cafeteria, but the Anglo kids had lunch boxes, metal boxes and sandwiches. Yo con mis tacos, I used to eat them the way a wino drinks his wine, So, The kids would say, what are you eating? No, nothing, One day, they kept looking at me, and I kept looking at the sandwiches, and I kept looking at my tacos, and I kept looking at this, and we exchanged lunches. And the rest is Taco Bell history, Anyway, what happened is that one day I went to get my bag. I was going to take it back to my mom, and I wasn't there. It wasn't in the closet. And as the teacher saw me running around como loco, she says, what happened? And I told her, a little brown paper bag. I said, yeah. She said, I took it. So let's give it back. And she says, I can't. And she escorted me back into a little room behind her desk. And there was my bag all ripped up, floating in a basin of water. I said, se volvió loca la maestra. You know what I mean? She went berserk. But no, and she said, look at this. And she picked up a little piece, dipped it into some paste. And the first time I noticed the mold, it was a face. It was an animal, a monkey. And then she put another piece on, smoothed it out, another piece, smoothed it out. And at that moment, she says, you want to try it? I said, yeah, okay, And at that moment, I discovered one of the secrets of the universe. It's called paper mache. And I said, what? It's past Halloween. It's already November. What is this for? And she said, it's for a play. And the whole school's involved. It's called Christmas in the Jungle. And we need 2 first graders to play monkeys. Was I still my mom knows? Yeah. And so I forgave her about the bag. I auditioned and I got my first role in the theater. It was amazing. She made a beautiful mask out of my mama's taco bag. You know, she painted it, and I got a costume that was better than my own clothes. I mean, I had a little green vest, you know, red pants, you know, una cona, you know, and then little shoes, a little hat, you know. Man, I was in heaven, and they converted the old school auditorium into a jungle, and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't wait to go to school. This is great. So we were rehearsing, and then I came back from school the week of the show, but early in the week, it was about a Monday or Tuesday, and my mom says, we're leaving tomorrow. What? Ma, the show's on Friday, you know? And she says, I know, but we're being evicted, mijo. We're being thrown out. We got to go. Pues lloré, you know what I mean? I ran out crying. She cried with me. And the next morning, I was in the back of the pickup truck, you know, with my brothers and sisters, as we pulled out and passed by the school in the San Joaquin fog, and I felt this hole open up in my chest. I thought I was going to be destroyed, you know, again. But I've always believed that a positive, you know, a negative can be turned into a positive, because that hole became the hungry mouth of my creativity. I took with me the secret of paper mache, my unrequited love of the theater, and also anger, residual anger, because we had been evicted from the labor camp. Approximately 20 years later, I went to Cesar Chavez and I pitched him the idea for a theater of, by, and for farm workers, El Teatro Campesino. It was born out of the dreams of a child, a campesino child. I was speaking to a bunch of superintendents years later, and the present superintendent of that school district in the San Joaquin Valley, of the Stratford School District, heard me speak, and he went back and checked his records, and he sent me a mimeograph copy of the attendance record of 1946, first grade. And there on the bottom says Louis Valdez. The kid was in school for 30 days. That was it. I was a migrant kid, in and out, but it shaped my life. And at the top of the page is the name of the teacher, Ruth Tremaine. And God bless her. She must be about 150 years old by now, but you know. But she launched my career. So I've always told teachers, you never know who you're teaching. You never know who you're inspiring. And as a teacher myself, I feel that way about my students. I don't care how old they are or how young or old, it's always the same. You never know who you're talking to, because our destiny and the Creator puts these opportunities before us. Your life is full of opportunity. Your life is full of treasures. Your life is full of power if you only know how to pull it out. Now, speaking of campesinos, you know, we have suffered the greatest disgrace because of la calumnia, you know, the calumny, the distortion that they put on the people that work in the fields. Now, over here, in most of the industrialized world, workers are wage slaves. You know, they work in the factories, they pluck chickens, they cut up meat, or they work in the fields, or they wash dishes, and they're considered to be mano de obra. You know, you're just working hands. But campesinos in Mexico were a lot more than that. You know, agriculture did not develop all over the world, you know. It developed in the areas where there was water, where there was fertility. And one of the wonders of Mexico is our agricultural treasures, is what we created. You know, what we created. The camote, the sweet potato, saved China from starvation once it was discovered and taken to Asia. Just like the potato from the Incas saved Europe and Russia. These are American creations, the indigenas, that have fed the world, but we don't get any credit for it. And we don't get credit for the hydroponic system that our pre-Columbian ancestors had. We don't get credit for knowing something about the relationship between the stars and the seasons, and when to produce enough food to create cities of 100,000 people. They're discovering there were a lot of them all over Mexico. Mexico is a treasure. You know, if people go to Europe, they got to know about Rome. They got to know about the Greeks. But people come to the Americas and they don't know about the Rome and the Greeks of the New World. Those are our people. And so it has been my mission. You can applaud. Dale, dale, guys, you know. So it has been my mission as a poet and as a writer, as a filmmaker, as a man of the teatro, is to understand what it is that we're doing. I have a new book out called Theater of the Sphere, The Vibrant Being. It's you can find it on Amazon. You can look it up. I recommend it to you. It's not just for theater people, because it's a way of life based on the ideas of our ancestors. Okay, Juan Carlos, dale gas. Okay, we're going to see some images up here from the book. I'm going to go flip through them real quick because I want to refer them. This is the title page, one of the not the cover of the book, but a title page. And you can see we have the Huelga eagle there. One of the reasons I wanted to start with this, because the interlocking eagles, you know, represent four movement, cuatro movimiento. But you know what's interesting is the flag was designed by Richard Chavez, and he put 5 steps on it. So what's interesting about this is 5 in the Mayan mathematical system is represented by a line. It's a dot bar system. And so it's very much like our zeros and ones today. You know, the Mayas were way out there. But the thing is that if you compute and add the 5, 5, 5, and 5, you get 20. 20. Okay, next slide. We go up. And this is more familiar. This is Naui Olin. This is cuatro movimiento. Now, this is the essence, you know, of the dynamic philosophy of our ancestors. We understand the symbols, but you got to understand them with your whole being. And this is why I have made this a study, and we have worked with the Teatro Campesino for more than 50 years to learn and elucidate all these thoughts. Next slide, por favor, Juan Carlos. And our ancient ancestors, this is Hunabku, el único dador de la medida y el movimiento. But you know, all of the ceremonial center, 400 cities of stone in Mesoamerica are based on this design. It's also the circle in the square. But you can see the pyramids, they had a shape and they were lined up to the stars because they were, in fact, children of, once toured the Lucas Ranch with George Lucas. You know, he's a friend filmmaker. And this is, of course, after Star Wars. But he went to this library, and I was amazed that his library, he has 3-story library in the Lucas Valley Ranch. He had all kinds of books about the Maya. And the term Star Wars comes from the Maya. The Maya fought battles according to the stars. They gave birth according to the stars because they were calibrating according to the universe. Well, it's interesting that Star Wars became a world famous movie, but it's a Mayan concept. You should know that because it's part of your culture. Moving on, por favor. Next. This is a Hunabku, the square inside the circle. Move on, please. Next. Next slide. Here we go. Now, what this refers to is the 2 calendars. The sacred calendar is the medium circle there. And this is the solar calendar, 360 days. And then we have the Tzolkin, the sacred calendar, which is 260 days. What's interesting about 260 days is that you add it up and it's equivalent to the 9 months that a child spends in the mama's womb. That's why they needed to have the sacred calendar, because this calibrates human behavior according to the solar calendar. Now, they're saying that the Mayas were Stone Age people, that they didn't have the wheel. Well, what is this? This is the cosmic wheel. They understood wheels. Are you kidding me? This is our people. You know, but we were led to believe that we can't do anything, that we don't understand anything. But there it is. Next slide, please. So we took the 20 days of the Tzolkin and broke them apart. This is the solar calendar, the Chab, and this is the sacred calendar of the Tzolkin. Imish ik akbal kanchik chankimi manik labat muluk okchuen eben ishmen kib kaban esnab kawak ahaw. What does that have to do with us? These are the 20 pasos that we have used in order to explore the physical and philosophical language of our ancestors. Next slide, please. Next slide, here we go. And this is how we broke it down. This is all in the book. This is why I don't want to spend too much time, but you can read about this. 20 days of the Tzolkin, the Mayan sacred calendar, 13 months of 20 days each for 260 days. Imish ikakbal kanchikchang kimi manik lamat bulok ok chuen eben ishmen kib kaban isnab kawak ahaw. 4 columns. Next slide, please. Next slide. And we have taken these then and broken them down into what they mean. The body, imish. Imish is pregnant womb. Ik is breathing. Akbal is flow like water. Kan is balance. Chikchan is gather all your life strength like a serpent and move. Because everything is a spiral. Everything is a spiral. So we've studied the language of our ancestors in the teatro, and this is the only way that you can do it. You can't sit on your butt and study a book. You got to move, okay? Aquí estoy. I'm 82 years old, folks. Mira. Okay? And then all of this relates to the heart. Kimi. Kami is death, because fear of death is where it begins, where you begin your feelings. And then Banik, Lamat, Muluk, Ok. Ok, number 10 here is love. So you go from fear of death to love as you develop your heart. Ok, backwards, you turn it inside out. The mind used to do this. Is ko, which means serpent, which is God. Now, the English word for God, inside out, turns into dog. Dog, God. Ok, ko. Okay, the mind, chuen, the monkey. This is why it's coincidental that my first role in the theater was a monkey, because it's a sign of intelligence. All the way down to men, which is creer, crear, hacer. Creer, crear, hacer. And you know, my maestro, Domingo Martinez Paredes, I'll show you a picture of him, revealed to me that the word amen, that we pray all over the world, amen. What does it mean? In Maya Yucateco, it means your creation. Amen. Y aquí está el men. Okay, means crear, crear, hacer, con dolor, amor y dolor. And then finally, the spirit or the soul. Kib kaban esnab kawakahau. Kib, you got to believe in something bigger than yourself. Kaban, Mother Earth. You got to believe in Mother Earth. Mother Earth, because she's alive. Esnab, speak the truth. This is all moral. This is morality. Kawak, you turn yourself inside out. Giving birth is turning yourself inside out. And what's curious here is that WAC, UAC, is number 6. And they have palindromes, which means that you can take a word and turn it inside out. So kawak, coming and going, is the same word. It's number 6 turned inside out. And then finally, ahaw, which is flower. We flower at the end of 20 pasos. Now, this is a whole way of life. But this is a philosophy that was given to us by our ancestors, but you need to apply it physically and in action and in relationship to your community, with your brothers and sisters in your family and your brothers and sisters in your community. Moving on, please, one more. And the ball game, ulama or piktapok or pits. You can see the ancient symbols and then the modern players, because they're still playing it in Sinaloa. They're playing this game, ulama. Very important. You know, this is the game required putting a rubber ball through a hole in a circle. Again, they say we didn't have the wheel. Well, the wheel's all over the ball courts. And the thing is that they use vulcanized rubber. They used to vulcanize the rubber by putting ashes, human ashes, into the rubber. It wasn't Goodyear that discovered vulcanization. It was the Maya 2,000 years ago. You know, they used to make raincoats. They used to make medicine out of rubber. So discover the treasures of your people. Discover the treasures of America. And so moving on, please. One more. And you can use these soccer balls. These are all pictures. And soccer, this is the big rubber ball, the original one. There's hard rubber from the Maya. And we use rubber balls when we do this at the teatro. We have number 5 and number 4 soccer balls. And you know, when they played the ball game, it was like playing basketball without being able to use your hands, and playing soccer without being able to use your feet. All they had was their cadera. That's how they knock the ball through. The game is coming back in Mexico. People are beginning to play it again. But what this does, it whips your spine. It whips your spine. And when you whip your spine, you send a current all the way up to the base of your skull, and you become more intelligent. You become more aware. You become more alive. And this gets me back to the child that I was back at 1 year old when that hot water hit me right here. And it's the Lord that burned the hell out of me to say, wake up, cabron. Wake up. Okay, moving on. One more. And this is what we do. We get on the ball, literally. So you learn how to work with the ball, and you do the spiral. And, this becomes all the dance forms. It is ballet. It is hula. It is rock and roll. It is todo, It's a U-joint. You know what I'm saying? Aquí está, Without this, there's no human race, So again, learn your culture and learn where you're coming from, because this is very deep. Our ancestors gave it to us. One more, please. And this is Domingo Martinez Paredes, my Mayan master who died in the 80s. He wrote the book. He wrote the books that I learned from him in the 1970s. I just want to give him honor. Give him honor for these ideas, because he was the Mayan master that passed these ideas. I want to close with a poem in 3 languages. We're bilingual. If you're bilingual, the synapses on your brain learn to go boop, 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 boop. This English only nonsense, Forget it. 1 language is not enough. You got to have at least 2, 3 or 4 or 5 would be really nice. You can learn French, you can learn German. All the cultures of the world are beautiful. Just because I celebrate my culture doesn't mean I don't appreciate European culture. We're speaking in English. I'm speaking in English, I think so. Or Spanish, fine. We connect to the rest of Asia. Incredible. Everything that you put into motion here begins to look like Asian martial arts because there's a link. In Africa, the jungle was the Bible of African people, and they move, man. They're geniuses. This is why they're such great athletes, because they're in contact with their bodies. Okay, and then we've already blended genetically, actually, in many areas, but we need to continue to learn from each other. And so, a poem in 3 languages. First, in Nahuatl, which is the Aztec language. Out Nahuatl. Tlain mash tikil na miki akan machinemian moyolo, ikti moyolo sa semana awik patikwika, intlaltik pa kanma chtiklaltiu. En español, ¿qué era lo que acaso tu mente hallaba? ¿Dónde andaba tu corazón? Por esto das tu corazón a cada cosa, sin rumbo lo llevas, vas destrozando tu corazón sobre la tierra. ¿Acaso puedes ir en pos de algo? And now in English, what is it that your mind was looking for? Where is your heart? For this you give your heart to everything? Your heart is without direction. You are destroying your heart. On this earth, you suppose that you can go in search of anything and find it? That is a poem by Prince Nehuatzalcoyot of Texcoco in 14 something or other. 3 languages. So the message is very clear. America, find your heart and discover the joy of being Mexican. Yeah.
Thank you. And another round of applause for Luis Valdez.
voz de la guitarra mía. Al despertar la mañana, quiere cantar su alegría a mi tierra mexicana. Yo le canto a sus praderas, a sus volcanes y flores, que son como talismanes del amor de mis amores. México lindo y querido, si muero lejos de ti, que digan que estoy dormido y que me traigan a ti. Que digan que estoy dormido y que me traigan a ti. México lindo y querido, si muero lejos de ti. Que me entierren en la sierra, al pie de los magueyales, y que me cubra su tierra, que es cuna de hombres cabales, voz de la guitarra mía. Al despertar la mañana, quiere cantar su alegría a mi tierra mexicana. México lindo y querido, si muero lejos de ti, que digan que soy dormido y que me traigan a ti. Que digan que estoy dormido y que me traigan a ti. México lindo y querido, si muero lejos de ti. Gracias.
That concludes our amazing program tonight. A special thank you to MEX Talks title sponsor, Target, as well as the presenting sponsors, Bimbo Bakeries USA, Blue Door Neighborhood Center, and Constellation Brands, to ABC Channel 7 Chicago, and all of tonight's sponsors. We couldn't have done this without your support. And thank you all so much for being here with us. Gracias, familia, por celebrar a nuestro México lindo y querido. ¡Y que viva México!